So this year was a really impactful year for biking across the Commonwealth. We had a very busy year with accomplishments that are not ours, but collectively together. We have a strong coalition with leadership from the administration and in the legislature, with coalition partners, and we have way more than we can fit on a single slide. So we had to be very selective in order to fit everything into 1 hour. So just a few highlights. In 2022, we are super proud that we were able to really hunker down and work on e-bikes. Some of the work that we've been working on for several years has been to define e-bikes as electric bicycles separate from motorized bicycles and mopeds. And along with that, we wanted to make sure that we were creating a platform that would allow for folks to be able to acquire an e-bike without the cost being a prohibitive barrier. We hosted dozens of events across the state, and of a special importance, and for me, one of the most heartwarming of activities was our intergenerational group rides, specifically in Worcester and in the city of Cambridge, where we partnered with local bike co-ops led with youth and those at AARP to come out and ride and explore and have workshops to really build and foster a community of intergenerational bike riders. We'll hear about our e-bike distribution program, which is a 2-year pilot program that MassBike kicked off this year. And that has been an amazing opportunity to learn some of the barriers and successes to riding, specifically in the city of Worcester, as a dense, populated, and hilly community. And of course, for Bay State Bike Month in May, we knocked it out of the park with all of our coalition partners across the state, from the Berkshires to the Cape, which featured over 160 events in 40 different municipalities across the state. Now, some of these wonderful accomplishments have led us to actually being ranked the #1 bike-friendly state in the country. Now, I'm just going to take a second to thank and provide proper accolades for all of the statewide work that has gone into this accomplishment. And this is from the League of American Bicyclists, where on a quasi-annual basis, they like to rank all 50 states based on the policies, the legislation, the funding mechanisms, and the crash rates to really see what some of the best success stories are. And I'm proud to say that Massachusetts, we went from #5 up to #1. Now, of course, this took all of us together, from the local to the regional, to the state, to the federal level, to all collaborate. But I want to give a special props to all of the champions in the administration, because I feel like there's a couple of highlights that we want to make sure aren't lost on some of the great successes that we had with Governor Baker, Mass DOT, DCR, and others, specifically to call out the Complete Streets program, which provides funding for municipalities towards biking, walking, and transit. This Shared Streets and Spaces program, which was essentially the COVID response that came from the administration, which provided the opportunities for municipalities to open up their streets and bring people first out. The Mass Trails program, which was a collaborative approach for an interagency conversation, which we have seen in the past, I believe, 6 years, really push forward the movement, the development, the funding, and the successes of rail trails, shared use paths, and the network throughout the state. And more in terms of the COVID response, to make sure that though we may have been dealing with a global pandemic, we were focusing on the people first, and we facilitated a response that allowed for better biking to really take hold throughout the Commonwealth. I'm proud to say that Massachusetts also is a state that makes use of a fair majority of the federal funds that are made available, including our transportation alternatives funding and our Safe Routes to Schools funding, of which MassBike is a participant of the Safe Routes programming throughout the state. We have a recently updated statewide bicycle plan, which is guiding us in terms of creating a everyday biking priority list. But I will say that though all of this work, legislatively and administratively, is making its way down to the rider level, there is still work to do. And though we may be receiving A's in a lot of the categories in terms of policies and engineering guidelines, we need to get some of these infrastructure and networking opportunities to come online. And specifically, we still have some work to do in terms of our traffic laws and our practices that are going to enable safe roads, including our 3 or 4 foot passing, side guards on trucks, and a statewide crash reporting, which is still work to be done. So please do stay tuned for what we are hoping to accomplish, perhaps at the tail end of this Baker administration and as we move into the incoming Healy administration next year. But I do want to highlight 2 specific major milestones that we were able to achieve in 2022. Now, for anybody who's worked in the State House, they should know that the passage of legislation is an arduous and complicated and long process. 2 very important pieces of legislation that we've been working on, which got finalized, codified, and signed this year. One, it's an act relative to electric bicycles, which would define e-bikes as we know them, as pedal assist or low-speed e-bikes, to be considered electric bicycles distinct from motorized bicycles and motor vehicles, so that we can build sensible regional and statewide regulations and incentives to encourage people to ride e-bikes. And this was important for MassBike because we know that those who are choosing to ride e-bikes do so because e-bikes are a gateway to overcome barriers, whether those barriers are physical, whether those barriers are geographic, or whether those barriers are economic or more. E-bikes solve a lot of the problems that are out there. And we are encouraging e-bikes very thoroughly at MassBike, but we know that we have work to do. Along those lines, we were also able to work with an act relative to electric bicycle rebates to help lower the cost of price points for e-bikes to make them more accessible to more people throughout the Commonwealth. And we're going to hear in a moment about all of that wonderful legislation from our champions at Beacon Hill. But I want to say that some of the work that MassBike was able to do, along with helping push this legislation through, and all the letters and coalition partners who are on this call to really help this move forward. I want to highlight this photo here is from one of our demo days that we hosted at the State House. We hosted 2 demo days at the State House to allow legislators and staff to come out and actually put themselves behind the handlebars to ride up Beacon Hill and see what e-bikes can do. And we hosted 4 different demo days throughout the state geared towards natural surface or commuting on pathways, and really just an opportunity to get out and really show people what we're talking about, what we mean, because though this is relatively new technology for folks, we are a little bit behind the curve in terms of defining what these devices are and then making sure that they can get into as many hands as possible.